The Persona series, particularly Persona 5, is one of those things that acts like it's super seriously super progressive, but isn't really. For example, Persona characters sure do go on a lot about how they've got no place to belong. In Persona 5, there's this whole darn mid-plot scene where they all talk about their troubled pasts and how they feel they've been cast aside by society. They all don't belong anywhere. Until now, they've found each other. They found that they belong by each other's sides, as the outcasts, as the phantom thieves, the literal outlaws of this world. And that's pretty gay, right? I didn't know I was a polyamorous trans lesbian disaster when I first played this, but this is absolutely gay. My girlfriends absolutely agreed. They're all gay. They may not realize it, but they are. They just are. And we say so it's just a fact. We've claimed them, we've identified them, we identify with them. They're gay, and trans, and ace, and poly, and all the things. And since they're fictional characters who are infinitely malleable and reinterpretable, us saying they're gay is all they need from us to be gay. That's almost certainly not something the original creators would agree with us on. Not that we need their permission, but it is nevertheless true. The Persona series, queer as it feels, is unfortunately not made by queer-friendly creators, and their queer-phobic views, regrettably, bleed into their work. All the queer representation to be found in the Persona series, or at least the entries directed by one Hoshino Katsura-san, is either an accident, a headcanon, or a joke. In Persona 3, there's a moment of trans panic in the series' typical hitting on girls at the beach scene, which appreciably they removed in the Persona 3 anime films, although the change probably wasn't made out of empathy for the LGBTQ+ community. It is nevertheless a positive change. These comprise the best Persona anime adaptation, by the way, and the only Persona anime I'd unironically recommend watching for its own sake. In Persona 5, we have the predatory gay men who chase Ryuji in Shinjuku. The localization team at Atlas USA tried to soften that for Royal, but it doesn't really fix anything. Really nothing could fix that scene, short of removing it altogether. There's also Lala, the bartender, who is perhaps the one instance of queer rep that could be read most positively, but it's clear, given the context of the other queer characters, that that was not the intention. She's a stereotype, albeit a far less malicious one than, say, the trans characters in Catherine, Persona's sister game from the same development team. And its remake, Catherine's its own can of worms. And then there's perhaps the most high-profile, awful botching of LGBTQ+ representation in all of gaming, at least prior to Cyberpunk 2077, existing. A prominent party member in Persona 4, whose transness is, according to this story, a problem he needs to solve. Shirogane Naota is a trans man, and the Megaten wiki misgenders him, but of course it has to, because a wiki has to objectively represent what it's covering because of stupid wiki rules, and Persona 4 views him as objectively a woman. In both English and Japanese, he's voiced by cisgender woman, and the story treats his gender identity as fake, as him pretending to be a man to evade misogynistic oppression in a sexist world. If only that were so simple. Hoshino and the Persona team, to my knowledge at least, haven't put forth any wretched turf manifesto like that of She Who Must Not Be Named, but I think this plenty suffices. The developers of one of my favorite games hate us, or at least don't care enough about us to not put transphobic shit in their games, which is really functionally the same thing, so whatever. I mean, they keep doing this. I don't think we really need them to come out and say anything. Even though Persona 5 doesn't have anything near as bad as this, it still is frustratingly cis-heteronormative, as it is irritatingly liberal in its politics. Just as the characters feel queer, but the story refuses to let the characters be queer, Persona 5 starts off with a superficially revolutionary thesis, but in the end, only serves to narratively reinforce the status quo. Despite that, Persona 5 is one of my favorite games, in no small part due to how it changed my life. My love for the game, and my devotion to writing fanfiction about it, led me to actualize my previously dormant creative drive, which, through thick and thin, continues to motivate me to this day. I found a creative community that helped me further realize that drive, and though pretty much everyone in that community now hates me forever and never wants anything to do with me ever again, I came out of it all a better person, convicted in my future decision to do this YouTube thing, and realized I was a girl. I might have gotten where I am now anyway without Persona 5's help, but all in all, this game and this cathartic, emotional experience that it gave me was a huge factor in me pushing myself to where I am. It's an important game to me because it was what I needed back when it came out, and I was in need of something to help me fully actualize myself. And even not considering that, it was and still is a fun, stylish video game and a terrific piece of art by most technical metrics. It's a good game. And playing through Persona 5 Royal, the game's recent re-release update thing, while my girlfriends watched me over Discord, none of these feelings changed. I still love this game. It's a shame that the developers are transphobes, but so it goes, unfortunately, when you're a trans person who plays video games. And I am certainly far from the only queer fan of Persona who's remained a fan despite that. Anyways, Royal, what did I think? Well, I hated it. Persona 5 Royal's the same game for the most part. It's just the same game with a bunch of new tweaks and content additions, almost all of which I liked. For 100 out of 140 hours, I was playing Persona 5 as I remembered it, but with a fresh coat of paint, and I found that I still loved it. My one criticism, a relatively minor one, was that it took 100 hours, the length of time it took to complete the vanilla game, for me to get to the new game, to get excited that finally I was playing a new video game, until I finished that new game and found a reason to hate it. I love Persona 5, and Persona 5 Royal is Persona 5, but I hate Royal. I hate this version of this game that I love, and if I had to pin down a reason why, I'd say this. The sense of catharsis in this game that changed my life is gone, and in its place, a deeper, further, more conclusive reinforcement of the status quo that the story had been purporting to reject. And I felt betrayed, disappointed, exhausted, all of the above, I think. And to explain why, well, let's start at the beginning. Persona 5 is the 6th mainline entry in the Persona series, itself a spin-off of the broader Megami Tensei franchise, a series of mostly post-apocalyptic JRPGs where you slay demons and stuff in an incessantly grindy dungeon crawl towards slaying God, which is fine in Japan because pretty much no one is a Christian over there, which is also why Neon Genesis Evangelion does all this stuff. Not that I care, since I'm an edgy atheist bitch. The Persona games, outside the spin-offs, set themselves apart from other Mega 10 entries by simplifying a lot of their systemic staples down to something that can play well to an audience with less patience. In Persona 3 onwards, life sim game segments are included to break up the dungeon crawling, giving you a limited amount of in-game time slots on the calendar to choose what you'll do that day. There, you grind out your social links, or in Persona 5, confidants, for relationship points that impact the stats of your personas and other battle benefits. But I'm already tired of explaining all of this. This video really isn't about the gameplay at all. I mainly just want to complain about the story. Relevant information? Grindy AF dungeon crawler with turn-based monster battles to cross with daily life, dating sim, visual novel stuff. The confidants are your special relationships that you have to level up, and the daily life skim game parts to get battle benefits and unlock stuff from leveling up confidants. There, moving on. Persona focuses, as most anime do, on a bunch of high school students who come into the possession of mysterious supernatural powers that parallel their coming-of-age character arcs. In this case, personas, their literal other selves, which are basically Jungian stands that they fight enemies in conjunction with. Every Persona game has some very deliberate theme that plays into its story, with both superficial motifs the story keeps reminding you about, and the overarching structure of the plot therein. Persona 3's is death, Persona 4's is truth, and that truth is that trans people aren't truly the gender they claim to be, and Persona 5's big thing is ostensibly rebellion. With their newfound spirit of rebellion, Persona 5's cast, who brand themselves the Phantom Thieves of Hearts, use their powers to infiltrate palaces, the twisted mental worlds of evil adults who have some malicious will they desire to impose on society. By defeating these villains' shadow selves in their palaces and stealing their treasure, the manifestation of their perception of the real-life object that activated their desire, they cause the real person to have a change of heart and own up to their real-life crimes. Starting with a sexual harasser, working their way up to bastard capitalists, a corrupt prosecutor, and a ruthless politician, before finalizing their run as the Lupin-esque Phantom Thieves by defeating an evil god of all sin. If you haven't played Persona 5 and the mental world aspect sounds cool or interesting, then play Psychonauts instead. It's, in my opinion, a cooler take on the idea, and also around 80 to 130 hours shorter. If you do, and then want Psychonauts but anime and crime drama, kind of, then maybe play Persona 5. You will have gotten yourself invested in the Persona series in the same way I did. You're welcome, I guess. This story is supposed to be about trying to save society by changing all the hearts of all the bad people who are bad and making society bad. But it's also, like Persona 3 and 4, a nostalgic high school slice-of-life simulation game about living out your youthful days in a pleasant town full of happy people in a welcoming community. So you want to change the world, but you also don't. No amount of Ryuji saying, "Society sucks, man," changes the fact that ultimately, by the logic of Persona 5's story, society isn't actually the problem. Not really. All the problems in society are down to these specific bad people ruining everyone's lives. But aha, that's where you're wrong, Mystic, you might be saying, if you've played the game through to the end. end, because in the final palace, they actually have to go and change all of society's heart in the center of the collective unconscious. And I know you know this, because you already mentioned the evil god whom they had to fight to change society's heart. Why would you try to obfuscate such a thing with your wretched, misleading YouTubery? You, wicked, deceitful fiend whose desires are now to be stolen because of this calling card from... Okay, this bit's getting old. And yeah, they do go and do that. Kind of. Let me explain. From the very start of the game, Persona 5's moral isn't simply these bad people are fucking up society, but also everyone else is letting them get away with it. The perverted teacher, Kamoshida, who becomes the Phantom Thieves' first target, is allowed to get away with beating and sexually assaulting his students because the principal, the parents of the students, and the students themselves all choose to look the other way until his heart is changed and they are all forced to look again. And the inverse plays out when the Phantom Thieves change the heart of the politician Shido and he confesses his crimes to the entire nation on live television, but everyone just doesn't see. They choose not to see. Shido's collaborators in the government and the criminal underworld, who are all at risk of going down with him should he be prosecuted, all work together to protect him from the law. And this is actually a relatively brave plot beat for such a politically liberal story, because it's the closest the story comes to saying, actually, no, taking out the system isn't as simple as taking out its figureheads.
We can only target individuals. Are we no match against the national power?
But also, yes, it really is that simple. They just needed to take out an even larger figurehead. The Phantom Thieves delve into the depths of mementos, the public's palace, the collective unconscious, to change the hearts of the submissive populace, to purge their desire to remain ignorant and apathetic. At the bottom of mementos, they find the Holy Grail, which is also alive and was impersonating your saving the world guide Igor this whole time, and is actually the god of control, Yaldabaoth, whom's the public wished into existence as a byproduct of their desire to remain chained to society. So they fight and defeat the god enslaving humanity, and although I found it rather tiresome on the first playthrough, further playthroughs had me cheering. Yes! Attack and dethrone God with big gun! It's fun. So now that we've done that thing, surely there should be some kind of a big change or something.
Soon a new world will come. One where mankind isn't held captive.
Morgana, were we not just now infiltrating the supernatural shadow prison, going to battle the literal god chaining humanity to their sin to, like, free mankind from captivity or something? I mean, even if that wasn't our express intention, you would think that doing something as big as that would have a bigger impact than whatever this is. Yeah, the world doesn't change. Society is still a prison. Our protagonist, Amamiya Ren, goes to prison, and Morgana's just like, yeah, thanks for all your hard work, Ren and Ryuji, but your day's not today. Just gotta wait around for someday. Such a massive act as slaying the false god chaining humanity to their desires that you'd think should have a more profound impact on the population as a whole results in little more than the public mostly acting as normal, except now that they think Shido seems kinda sketchy. That's it. That's the only notable change. I mean, that, and I guess there's not an evil holy grail / god ruling the world. I guess that's nice. And now that the public are going to hold Shido accountable, and the conspiracy's been neutered, and Ren's going to testify against him, and Sai's no longer personally corrupted by her desire to forego real justice for the sake of winning every one of her cases as a prosecutor, Shido's going to be tried and convicted by the law. So long as all the bad people and the evil god corrupting the system get weeded out, the system works. Sure, mankind is still held captive, but someday. The story vaguely gestures in the direction of someday in the future without bothering to try and imagine that day being now. This here's a classic example of what's called subversion and containment, starting off with a thesis of resistance to the status quo, but following that up with a narrative which ultimately reinforces it. Because yeah, the story wants you to be cognizant of the fact that society sucks, and specifically that Japanese society sucks, with all the specificity of its specifically Japanese social commentary. It's readily apparent basic bitch anti-nationalist messagery, but as a Persona game, it also wants you to be nostalgic for your time in this world, and for that to work, the world has to be fundamentally good. The world can't change. The world isn't allowed to change, and it never needed to change anyway. The thing that was meant to totally fix society, the changing of the public's hearts, apart from them now prosecuting Shido and exonerating Ren, just two individuals, nothing has changed. Sai says, "I'll be fighting the good fight as a lawyer, and also the stigmas that come with your criminal record. Even though it was wiped, they won't go away. Oh well, you can't fix everything." So you might be wondering if this is such an anticlimactic, disappointing, nothing changes climax to such a politically milquetoast story that ultimately abandons its thesis of rebellion for support of the status quo, then where, on my first run through the original game, did I find that feeling of catharsis and actualization? After running about town to pick up everyone's New Game Plus gifts and bid them adieu, until the player decides to start the game again at least, Ren's on his merry way to go home, when suddenly his friends, the former Phantom Thieves, show up in a big van to spirit him away. Morgana breaks down the car belonging to the G-Men tailing them, and they speed off into the proverbial sunset as Ren raises the sunroof and exposes his face to the open air, enjoying sweet freedom. And what this act symbolizes to me is that these kids don't have supernatural powers anymore, can't steal hearts, but they can still rebel. Persona 5, at least the vanilla game, is trying to gently deposit its players back into reality with a rebellious spirit in mind. It's trying to say, even if you can't be a phantom thief, you can still be a force for positive change. And if you think about the ending that way, it kind of makes sense. The drive to the sea, the assertion that they're free now to do whatever they want. Ren presenting his face to the open air. The last act of rebellion. Well, at least until Persona 5 Strikers, I guess, but at least at the end of this story now, it's your turn to be the change. And that's not a terrible note to end on. It gives a strong sense of closure, and it contextualizes the story that preceded it, gives it purpose. Persona 5 ends with the world still having real problems, but spirited souls are still here to help try and change it, and that's the case in our world, too. So, this is maybe not the ending I would have chosen, but it makes sense. It's still one of my favorite video game endings ever because it feels emotionally like the natural conclusion to this cool story about rebelling and breaking out of society. They've literally left society for the freedom of the open road. Thematically, it's a perfect ending. And Persona 5 Royal ruined all of this. While Persona 5 Royal is, as I said, mostly unchanged from vanilla P5, it introduces some appreciated mechanical tweaks, including a grappling hook that can be used contextually in the slightly redesigned palaces. There's also some new story and art content, and a new epilogue that is unlocked by leveling up the 3 new confidant routes added to the game. Yoshizawa Kasumi, an accomplished gymnast and sword lesbian who makes an exception for Ren because heteronormativity. A reworked confidant route for Akechi Goro, the supernaturally empowered high school hitman tasked by Shido with tracking down and eliminating the Phantom Thieves. And Maruki Takuto, a kindly, mild-mannered psychologist who secretly aspires to be God. Once you've maxed out these relationships and then defeated the final boss, Sai goes up to Ren and asks him to turn himself in to testify against Shido, just like in the original game, except
there's no need for that.
You.
Akechi takes the fall for Ren and the player, to which Sai agrees.
I'm sorry. You can forget everything I just told you.
Thus begins what I call the Royal 30-hour Detour. After your Christmas date and an end-of-year celebration event, Ren has a bizarre dream before waking up on New Year's Day to find things are weird. Morgana's gone missing. Ren's never seen this guy before. His friends are all acting strangely jovial, and Futaba's mom has somehow come back to life. And Akechi's here now. Out of prison, he's privy to the world's changes as well, and approaches Ren to ask about what the hell is going on. They soon discover, by way of extraordinary circumstances, reality has been altered by a new influence now occupying the power vacuum vacated by Yaldabaoth, the aforementioned psychologist Maruki Takuto. Lavenza, Ren's Velvet Room handler and my daughter, helpfully explains all the anime bullshit reasons why Maruki is God now in a cutscene later on. Basically, he's God now. Why? Well, in short, because the Phantom Thieves unwittingly granted his wish, which was to grant him the power to grant their wishes. Oh, and also it turns out that Kasumi is actually Yoshizawa Sumire because her older sister, Kasumi, died before she could carry out her dream. Racked with survivor's guilt, Sumire wished to become Kasumi and carry out that dream in her place. So Maruki granted her wish. It's basically the plot of Bloom Into You, but with more anime steps in between, and without the good lesbian girlfriend Sumire deserves, because the writers are homophobic. More importantly, Maruki's made it so none of the bad things ever happened, everyone's happy and fine, and the world is good now. Yay! And they decide to put it back. You are given the option of accepting the new reality Maruki has created, but if you do, you're only shown a brief ending cutscene, a credits roll showing how happy everyone is now, and then locked out of a significant chunk of the game, as well as the bonuses awarded by your Confidant's New Game Plus gifts, which you're given no opportunity to collect. This is not the choice the game wants you to make. Sure, you get the Seen the Ending trophy, regardless of whichever path you picked, but the proper ending is, supposedly, the true ending, and it's the one that gives you the most content and the biggest leg up in New Game Plus, so it's clear that the game wants you to choose it. Persona's multiple endings are weird like this. The correct choices are usually incredibly obvious, and if you pick the wrong one, it's right away clear you're not getting the right ending. In Persona 3, the wrong choice results in the characters taking the end of the world lying down, which they all make clear they do not want to do. Earlier in Persona 5, selling out your friends results in Sai leaving the room before Ren can convince her to help trick Akechi into not killing him, and that obviously results in him, and presumably the rest of the Phantom Thieves, dying, so that's obviously bad. These are not deep choices, but also the game doesn't treat them like deep choices, which is, you know, fine. They're there if you want to be a contrarian bastard, I guess. But this is a more complicated moral quandary, or at least it should be, and the story simply doesn't treat it like one. Just like every other Persona ending, it holds no real weight because it amounts to, oops, wrong ending, time to reload a save. The other Phantom Thieves, meanwhile, all act like this is an obvious choice. They decide that they cannot accept Maruki's reality because it's not real, I guess. Wasn't Morgana saying in that cutscene that reality is subjective, reality is what all of you make of it together and all of that? So, like, it's not as if this is an objective choice to make or anything. They could choose Maruki's reality, and it wouldn't be an objectively false reality, since they'd all agree it's true. So why are they treating this like it's such a cut and dry matter? Anyway, you proceed onwards to conquer the final palace and final boss, as you set out to stop an altruistic man from using his supernatural cognition shifting powers to make the world better. None of this feels right. Okay, so just to clarify, both of these options kind of suck. Maruki's actions are obviously ethically questionable. Choosing his world means the Phantom Thieves would effectively be signing away their agency to let one man unilaterally decide what's best for them, and yeah, that's the thing the game was telling you was bad. That's the very thing that the entire populace did by wishing Yaldabaoth into existence. And revising everyone's lives and memories in the world like that in the name of what you, on your own, decided to be the optimal treatment for perceived illnesses that you alone diagnosed them with, that is absolutely shady. I might like it if some of my memories could be revised now, but I certainly wouldn't want that done without the chance to fully understand what the hell I'd be doing and give my explicit consent. As a general rule, I'm opposed to any sort of higher authority making choices for other people's lives, whether that be a politician, a government, or a god. Even if the choices are things I like and think are good, that's still not their choice to make. And you might think, well, I already got rid of Yaldabaoth, so except getting rid of Yaldabaoth, as we've already explored, changed fuck all. The choice they're being offered, as I see it, is to live in a world ruled by an opaque, untouchable authority limiting their freedom, or the world Maruki's offering them, where they're being ruled by an opaque, untouchable authority limiting their freedom, but benevolence this time. And I guess they have to resist Maruki, because even if he may be benevolent, he's still an authority limiting their freedom with obtuse and arbitrary restrictions on the organization of their reality and society. But that's already the world they live in. That's already the world we live in. Why, after 100 hours of fighting to change society for the better, are the Phantom Thieves of Hearts now fighting to keep it as it is? Maruki is doing the very same thing the Phantom Thieves said they were doing, changing people's cognitions to fix the world, and he seems to have, by some measure, succeeded. In Maruki's world, the economy is booming, the crime rate is dropping, regular people have enough capital and emotional freedom to quit their shitty jobs and lead their ideal lives, everyone's generally pleasant and polite to each other, and save for the odd interpersonal conflicts here or there, everything seems fine. We're not given a complete picture of the political policy relevant to the environment, civil rights, healthcare, and public services, and so on that's been enacted in Maruki's new reality, but I can presume it works out to what would cause the least amount of suffering. I feel like there's surely a better way or a more interesting answer than just no, fuck you, put it back. And even if there wasn't any other such choice, well then, I'd have to opt for benevolent authority such as this over the current neoliberal order of alternating between caustic negligence and outright violence. This is the better world that you'd think the Phantom Thieves would want, would be aiming for, and they reject it. They decide that they'd rather have the old world, with all the pain and suffering it entailed, that they'd rather choose to live with that pain and have the choice to decide their path forward. Sure, they want all the changes that Maruki is offering them in this new reality, but they shake their heads, saying, no, 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 we can't deny the real in order to satisfy our desires. And it's not like they don't get that Maruki's reality is benefiting people, or even that they think the other world is better. They just kind of don't care.
You know, there probably are plenty of people who'd ultimately benefit from your reality. But what about the people who want to take on the world themselves? How's it right to rob them of their opportunities?
Sure, Maruki shouldn't necessarily choose for everyone, but then why should the Phantom Thieves? We're never given a satisfactory answer to this. This choice is too complicated for Persona 5's liberal outlook, and the best answer it can come up with is seriously, this is too much of a change. This is too big and scary of a change all at once. Just put it back. And as for why the Phantom Thieves are fine with making this choice, well, I can only come up with one answer, and I hate it. It's this. The Phantom Thieves don't actually give a shit about saving society. And if you really think about it, they never did they? They sure pretended to, but at the end of it all they cared about was winning the day so they could go back to hanging out at LeBlanc, living out their youth with a delicious cup of coffee. They only ever cared about the game's villains because they specifically were being directly threatened. And when their lives weren't at stake, they were on the hunt for a target because they wanted to increase their notoriety. They didn't defeat Kamoshida to help their fellow students, they did it because Ryuji held a grudge and An was being harassed. They didn't defeat Shido to save Japan, they defeated Shido to save their skin. They didn't defeat Yaldmouth to reform society, they defeated Yaldmouth to get society to stop turning a blind eye to Shido's case, and nothing more. And they're only defeating Maruki now, not because they think it's better for the world, but because of their own selfish reasons. These are, after all, the same kids who only decided to keep being Phantom Thieves after the Kamoshida case because some snobby adults were rude to them at an expensive buffet. This is not a choice they're making with actual stakes to their lives, like with the rest of their targets in the original game. It's purely a personal exercise to them, a kind of surreal thought experiment, as opposed to the meaningful material choice that this would be if they were socially disadvantaged minorities in more than my headcanons. They've got their justice and the justice of their immediate friends, and beyond that, they don't actually care. And I hate it, and it ruins the game for me because it clarifies, without a doubt, the actual message of Persona 5. It isn't be the change you want to see, it's don't change the world too much. Speaking of which, following Maruki's defeat, the world reverts back to as it had been in the original game's story. I rolled my eyes. But hey, I thought, I guess I'll get to see them be free again as they tear up the open road one more time, presumably now with Sumire in tow. But that's not what happened. In the new true ending of Persona 5 Royal, Ren leaves home and sees his friends in the van, but this time, he doesn't go with them. Instead of sabotaging the G-Men's car, they opt to split up and lead their assailants on a wild chase through the Shibuya streets, while Ren is taken by Maruki, now a cab driver, to the station, and the Phantom Thieves wave him off, drive away, and he passes Sumire by on the platform while waiting for the train, and he gets on the train. Roll credits. And I said aloud as my girlfriend watched me over Discord, "What the fuck was that?" But also, Haru! And also, what the fuck was even that? The perfect ending, the catharsis that changed my life, erased. Even the great ending song swapped out for another song that I will admit is also good, but I nonetheless prefer the original credits song. They sanded off the edges of one of my favorite endings to one of my favorite video games, only for Ren to just quietly, politely get back on the train. No open air, no open road, no sea breeze, just time to go home. And why would they do that? The most obvious reason is so that they can tease that Akechi is maybe still alive in this reality, but I have another take. This is the definitive version of Persona 5, so they say. And like with most video game updates, remakes, and re-releases, it ostensibly is a replacement for the original version. It's supposed to be a fix for Persona 5. And as such, if you understand this ending as a fix for the original ending, that implies something wrong with that ending. The conclusion had been too subversive, the containment too ambiguous, the ending too rebellious, too transgressive. So in Royal, they needed to make sure you knew the world is not allowed to change. The Phantom Thieves aren't going to change things. They added a whole 30 hours of game where the Phantom Thieves choose not to change things. And then they tacked on this new cutscene to erase their final rebellion, to hammer the point home. Ren isn't allowed his final rebellion. Ren has to get back on the train. He's just going home now, like a good, obedient kid, to make sure you know we don't want you to change the world that much. We're not that radical. And that's that. The original ending of Persona 5 wasn't all that radical to begin with. It was functionally the same ending, really. It was just easier to ignore the story's ultimate reinforcing of the status quo that rendered its social critique toothless, but I still love this game for the most part. And despite my disappointment, I still had a great time with Royal. I enjoyed the new palace and the chance to see more of Akechi being more edgy this time. Kasumi/Sumire is a nice and good character, and I like her, and she's a sword lesbian and I love her. Haru's still transition goals, and her cutely grabbing at the mug on the top shelf in Royal's new credits made me wish that getting shorter could be part of transitioning. The cast of Persona 5 is still queer in my heart, no matter whatever other queer-phobic heteronormative shit Atlas might keep putting in their games. Despite my grievances, I'm still fond of the story, not because of what it is, but because of what it was to me at the time, what it did for me at the time. That, to me, and the way I came to actualize my life after experiencing Persona 5 is and will always be more important to me than my disappointment with Royal, more meaningful to me than any disappointment I might have with the Persona team's future works. Although, seriously, I wish they would stop putting queerphobia in their games, and fuck them for doing that. The fact that I saw something different this time, something I didn't like, doesn't change what I saw back then, what I loved back then. That can't change. That won't change. As Nisio Isin, the writer of another great series that I also love, put it in the afterword to Bakemonogatari Volume 1,
when I suggest a book I love to people, I try to give an immersive account of a scene that moved me. But sometimes, upon rereading the book, I find out that the scene isn't there. At the end of the day, humans are unreliable creatures, so when we feel something, more than half of it is a misunderstanding. But maybe you shouldn't interpret it in a pessimistic way, and instead look at it as the author or the story having the power to make you misunderstand. If you're a reader, I'm sure you've experienced looking back at a book that had an impact on you, and realizing that it actually wasn't that big of a deal after all. And recommending a book that moved you in your teens to current teens, promising them that they will love it, and not getting a great reaction, is something we all get a taste of. That's thanks to audience misunderstanding, or mental images if you want to put a better spin on it. And maybe instead of feeling let down, you ought to be giving thanks for the dreams the work allowed you to see.
So, despite everything, I'm sad that I have changed, that my view of this work has changed, and that Persona 5 will never again be able to make me feel quite how I felt the first time I played it. But I'm also grateful that I have changed, that I have come closer to becoming the person I want to be, grateful that Persona 5 was once able to show me what I needed to see. And as always, I have much changing left to do. Thank you for your time.
The end draws near. Let's just sit here and wait. Come take a seat right here. Let's drink our lives away. I guess I could say I had a bit of fun with you. I bought a table for two. When I close my eyes, I see everyone I've touched parading by my side. How I say when I look inside, I feel a closeness that I've never felt before I tried. Can you see where music gets you? Exactly the same place as anyone before you, running the same race. I guess that I could say I found some meaning here with you. I bought a table for two. When I close my eyes, I see everyone I've touched parading by my side. How I say when I look inside, I feel a closeness that I've never felt before I tried. Okay, you take this one. Okay, that's enough. When I close my eyes, I see everyone I've touched parading by my side. How I say when I look inside, I feel a closeness that I've never felt before I tried. When I close my eyes, it's over. I see everyone I've touched parading by my side. How I say when I look inside, the album's done. I feel a closeness that I've never felt before I tried. Get out.
If you want to Patreon me to pressure me to make more videos about the Persona series and finally finish that Monogatari goal. Oh my god, I haven't done that. I have so much to... Yeah, if you want to do that, you can go to patreon.com/joyce-stick, and you can also go to the other places where you can give me money, or you can follow me the other places, you know, or you can follow me nowhere and just click the YouTube things. I don't really care. I mean, I do care. But Alf, Athiet, Awu, Cassandra, Eli Bergmoss, Firesteel, Genevieve, Hikari no Yume, Misia, Nishwert, Scimitar, and Tis. And everyone else who has made this video and further videos possible to keep doing and for me to be possible to keep existing. Thanks to all of you for your time and attention. Bye-bye.
I can't say I know for sure what this app does, and there's no guarantee we'll come back. I'm in.